Swazdvrashenium to Zzineohp yapping about Russian with a guise of Minecraft. Last time I mentioned Mobs and Enchantments, which I also looked over, but ran out of time for Nu Umenya Сейчас есть время. The rest of this video will probably be in English. We'll start with mobs. A lot of mobs are things that exist in real life, like spiders and skeletons. In real life, spiders are smaller and not hostile, and skeletons use melee weapons instead of bows, but the names still stand. Now, for trademark reasons, I think, Creeper, Enderman, Endermite, Ghast, Hoglin, Mushroom, Piglin, Shulker, Wither, and Zoglin are all translated directly. It might be worth noting that Hoglin in Russian uses h rather than g for the h, though that seems like an increasingly modern change. Not to say that there aren't discussions about that, but if I wanted to talk about different names people propose, that would be a whole separate video, one I might still make, but later. Also, I'm only doing Java Edition. So the main outliers are the Illagers, the recent verb mobs that got everyone upset about naming conventions, Ally, and Strider. You would think that Illagers are pretty easy to translate because their names are just agent nouns, and Evoker, Pillager, and Ravager are fine, except in Japanese where they're phonetically translated as Evoka. Just as Russian clearly had a lot more care, Japanese evidently had a lot less. Vindicator is also hard to do. If you recall, the Vindicator was introduced before the concept of Illagers to be the minor threat inhabiting the woodland mansions. To that end, they're called Dina in German, which means butler or manservant. Korean attempts to calque it, but it comes off looking more like apologist or justifier, which I guess is kind of similar to vindicating, but it seems more like they make up false accusations rather than actually acting on them. And the Russian is pobornik, which means like a fervent supporter of something, more specifically a partisan, and after that, every name is phonetically translated not only in Japanese, but also in Korean, even The Guardian. But in the remaining languages, Vex is usually translated as vexation or vexer, notably in German. This is Plagegeist, cognate with plague ghost. This is very helpful because the ally is then the Hilfsgeist, or help ghost. The Russian name for the ally is Tikhonya, which means the quiet one, and it's also the name of a 2022 movie. The husk is called Kadavr in Russian, which means cadaver. It's also the name of a film. I'll mention that whenever it happens, just in case it is a reference. The German name is the more uncreative Wüstenzombie, or desert zombie. The Spanish is disecado, which I assume is an error because that means dissected and is very close to desecado, which means desiccated or dried out. In a stroke of genius rivaling the first, the German name of the bogged is Sumpfskelett, or swamp skeleton. Fortunately, the parched gets a better name, which is just the parched. In Russian, it's something like the deserted one, both meanings, and Spanish calls it the mummified. The stray is Eiswanderer in German, which I guess is fine. It's also maybe a play on Einwanderer, immigrant. The Russian word is Zimagor, which is a term for a hobo-type character that lives out in the countryside during the summer and then moves into the city to work during the winter, hence the name. The breeze in Russian is called Vikhr, a Slavic mythological evil wind spirit, presumably related to the southern Slavic Vila, at least in the sense that they both have wind in the name, which isn't actually that much. Strider is phonetic in Spanish, but Russian uses Lavamirka, a play on Vodomirka, which means a water strider, and that's mobs. Over to enchantments. Now, try to stay with me for a moment. Have you noticed that blast protection, fire protection, projectile protection, and protection all end in the word protection? That sort of lumps them together into a set. This is true for other languages too, though in Russian and Japanese, feather falling is falling protection, one of that group. Except then Japanese doesn't include regular protection, and in Russian that's only for bedrock. It's weird in Java. Additionally, there's a similar underwater set of enchantments, including Aqua Affinity and Depth Strider, with the same adjective in every language except English and Korean, and then respiration is sometimes included. In Russian, we have underwater walking, underwater breathing, and underwater ling, which sounds nicer in Russian. German has water affinity and water walker. Spanish has aqua affinity, aqua agility, and then aqua propulsion from Riptide. Japanese has underwater mining, underwater walking, and underwater breathing, and Korean doesn't have this set. Similarly, German switches piercing for through shot to match it with multi-shot. Japanese uses this word for bane of arthropods, which means something like silver bullet. Bane is a fine translation, actually. However, it's lumped in with impaling, bane of aquatic, and smite, bane of undead, into a single bane set. Power, sharpness, and sweeping edge are also lumped together into a set as increased range damage, increased area damage, and increased damage. Yes, Japanese names still suck. This is further seen in looting, drop increase, swift sneak, sneak speed increase, and protection, damage reduction. These are the only languages not to directly translate lure, though, instead opting for feeding frenzy. Korean refers to aquafinity using the chemical term hydrophilic, which I guess is technically the same words. It also refers to bane of arthropods as insecticide, which I really like. Depth strider is called webbed feet, which is also pretty great. Channeling is called sacrament, though it's literally the same too. Kana as gathering electricity. Channeling is changed in every language, actually. Japanese predictably went with call lightning. German is discharge. Spanish is conductivity. And Russian is Gromovierjets, which means thunderer and is also in honorific for the Slavic sky god. And it's also a movie, I guess. Riptide is also changed, being wake in German and rapids in Korean and Japanese, and I already went over Spanish. German further uses gentleness for silk touch, harpoon for impaling, and scurrying for swift sneak. Russian naturally gets the most creative. Swift Sneak is dexterity, multi-shot is triple shot, feather falling becomes weightlessness, frostwalker is Yedlhood, which is a kind of ice drift, and smite is heavenly retribution. So, pretty cool. Anyway, that's enough of this video. Go check out the other one I posted today.